All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back.
Hello.
Season 9. Here we are.
Season 9.
Congratulations.
9 is my lucky number. It's going to be a lucky season. I don't know what that means, but
Yes,
it's going to
indeed.
be a lucky season.
Has been so far.
I think so. Shoot. You're right, Nico. Some new stuff for season 9. Obviously, we have video, which is really great. Recurring things for season 9. We have somebody here who was a season 4 guest of ours. So your first episode was published in May of 23, but we call it the Lost File because it certainly was something that I lost for a good while. And we recorded that, I think, back in like September of 2022. Good to have you back.
Thank you for
Why
having
don't
me
you,
back.
yeah, tell us a little bit
Sure.
about yourself. If people, didn't listen to that episode, or if you want to go back and listen to that one and then come on back. But tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we want to hear what's been going on the past,
Yeah, what have you been up to?
the past few years.
Well, I'm Dimitri. That first year that we spoke, that was at like the birth moment of my program, Meraki Laographic Arts here in New York. I had only been in New York for 2 years at that point. And, you were speaking to me when everything in my head was just hopes and dreams. And up until November that year, I was sitting in a room of 0 to 5 people a couple times a week, just seeing who would come, who would stick around. Eventually, we get to where we are now. 4 years on, we have about 120 students. I'm based in a few different locations in this moment. Astoria still being what I would consider my strong hub of Meraki, where I run independently outside of any churches. I rent space. And this year, we're looking at about 40 registered adults in Astoria. I go every other week to Maryland to work with another teacher, Maria Giacomatos, a friend of ours. And there's about 30 high school kids there that we are working with. A lot of good kids. I'm really enjoying that one, even though you're on a 3.5-hour Amtrak ride, which sometimes shows up on time, sometimes doesn't. Sometimes the engine dies halfway there.
No.
It's happened, but that's okay.
It's all part of the journey.
It is all part of the journey. And of course, I have location for youth here in Astoria, but also in Brooklyn. So a lot has happened in these last 4 years, but this is kind of where we're at. Trying to not just be a dance program. I've had it in my head since the beginning that I would like to have music programs and cultural workshop programs. In our second year, introduced, Paradosi workshops where we would do things with kids like Lazarakia bakes and Kirasarakosti, things with not just those activities themselves, but a presentation on the history of those traditions, along with music and some dance elements that would be related to those things. This last year, we started a Greek language program, which I, of course, desperately need to partake in. And this year, we're getting ready this fall to launch our traditional embroidery workshop class. We're starting with a monthly class, as well as a weekly polifonico choir class with one of my other dancers, Dennis. He's going to teach that class.
Wow.
Fantastic. Congratulations, Dimitri. And it's so great to see all your efforts flourishing, really. So
Thank you. Thank you.
it's all about persistence and hanging in there. And it's just really great to see that, the success you're having. And we wish you much, much more in the future and everything else that comes with that.
Thank you. Don't gas me up too much.
We won't. We'll take you down. Don't worry. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, we got time.
I'm just reading your messages, BT dubs, in the Instagram that you guys were like, let us in. Maria's putting on her face still.
I didn't say that. That was
Yeah.
that was
That was
our
Nico.
friend Nico.
I want to let you know that I was actually recording like an hour and a half of all these different videos for the classes I'm teaching this semester. So I was woefully prepared early.
She was already prepared.
True, but then you didn't read the message after that. So
I didn't, because I just saw that one. Oh, I always look fabulous. You're sweet.
Posh.
Yeah. And I actually sort of forgot at the beginning that we were using video. Like I was going to surprise people with who was on the podcast. But anyway, here we are, we're using video.
Like, oh wait, we're doing the video thing. That's right.
Exactly. I'm like, people know who this, like, I mean, if they know you, they know who you are. Anyway, what has been your favorite addition to Meraki? Because I mean, you just went through it. There's a whole lot of stuff there. Like, if you're not interested in dance, there's other things you can do, or like, there's sort of, it's like you're curating things for all ages, right? Like, a mom might be interested in the embroidery. Not saying it has to be a mom, but it could be while
Yeah.
her kids are like learning dance. But what has been your favorite addition to the Meraki kind of like catalog of offerings? And maybe if it did it surprise you that it was your favorite?
I suppose the thing that we've seen the most is with the cultural workshops that we've been putting on based on like calendar of traditional things. But I guess when I first created Meraki, it was mostly based on the adults and creating parea, and we would do things like parea night where we potluck instead of have practice. And now that's going. We go, every other Thursday after practice to one of the silogos for repetica night, and we eat and we hang out. But I guess I didn't expect to actually be taken so much by the youth parea. Comes with the kids that come regularly to the workshops that we offer. And many of the kids, until this year, actually, many of the kids were not involved in my dance classes at all. The parents would come, and some of the kids, maybe they would be recommended by other parents, but some of them would meet. And then now the other parents that they met there, the kids are hanging out, and that they would come to the workshops together. And now some of them are dancing with me now as well. And so I don't know, I didn't expect to even notice that, I created an environment where a new little community of kids that I hope will stay
Hmm.
with me and grow up together, can have this kind of experience that I had growing up. As a reminder for whoever doesn't know, who didn't hear the first one, I'm not from New York. I'm from Las Vegas, and I grew up in the FDF circuit out there. That's how Nico and I know each other from way back
Way back.
2007 times,
Babies.
Vegas.
Babies.
And I think about that feeling that I had,
Yeah.
knowing that I'm looking forward to go see these people. We're going to go do these activities together. And it always felt like a safe environment of, even when we would fight, a safe environment of love
Is it fighting or was it healthy competition?
with each other in the group, or a healthy competition at the competition.
I guess yes. They could be both.
I mean, I have to say, from my experience at FDF, the reason why we know each other is because we became very good friends. I mean,
Yeah,
we were competing against each other, but you're from Seattle, I'm from Las Vegas, and we've kept in touch for a long time. And we have a number of people that we even saw together at like HDF, that we grew up going to FDF together, and
that's right. Yeah,
competition be damned, here with our own little parea.
Hmm.
exactly. And then the web actually just keeps getting bigger and bigger. It's like, oh, you know Dimitri too.
Hmm. Yeah. I feel like we should have asked Panagioti to be on this podcast too. Could have been all three of you guys, which would have been, I would have been like, see ya. Let me know when you're done. Make sure you hit stop on the recording.
3 hours later.
We can plan that for the future.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. A takeover of sorts. Dimitri, I think one of the things that I love the most is just seeing, obviously, like your adult group. Yes, fantastic. And I can't wait to see, where you take the Maryland group also this year in conjunction with Maria. I think that's going to be exciting. But the thing I love seeing the most is the little rat pack that has formed of, those just very adorable, really, really cute little kids,
Yeah.
and just how stylistically they are dancing so well, right?
Yeah.
It's wild. They're so cute. They're so cute.
Well, I have to say about them, I mean, you get a few different benefits of building an Astoria. I have to build the youth group one by one.
Hmm.
So in the first year, I mean, you're speaking about a few of them that I know, but the first famous one, because I get
Hmm.
this feedback a lot, because like even my teachers in Greece, who is this boy with the buzz cut?
Yeah.
And this one, Apostoli, he started with me at 5, and he was the only kid in the group 2 years ago. And so basically, he had private lessons for a year. Yeah, I already had the space, and I didn't want to cancel a class, especially if somebody was interested. And his mother was very interested, and he was very good with me. And I would say that the building one by one has its benefits because the parents and kids that stick around, I think there's a certain immediate bond that you feel rather than jumping into a community or going to a church that has a youth program. And then they say, we have 40 kids. A bunch are going to be really bratty and not want to be there and make it really difficult. And when you're building one by one, now, okay, we have almost 10 in his group, and I'm happy to grow slowly with them because each one is their own lovely little kid who
Mhm.
creates our own little bond together. And Apostoli is his own troublemaker. And then the next year I got his other troublemaker brother, who is his own little firestorm of a personality. I mean, and that's the case in any educational environment that, yes, I post these videos of them dancing and they dance very well. But at the same time, that's the benefit of small classrooms
Mhm.
to a private lesson to a small classroom. I get to give more attention to each of them. So this is a big thing.
I think it's more than just that. I want to give you props for actually taking the time because I think it's overlooked a lot with our younger kids. You really need someone very skilled and not just talented, but skilled and knowledgeable how to present these things to kids, have the patience with them to give them that good foundation. 'Cause if they don't have that, then, whether they lose interest or whatever it is. So honestly, my hat off to you because it's, a lot of people get, whether it's sidetracked or think it's not as important, we really need to focus on that younger generation.
Sure. Well, I think in terms of the approach with the kids, with the patients, I mean, I come from a background studying music. I went up to my master's in music, grew up dancing. I also, for about 6.5 years, did martial arts. And okay, I try to take things uh, from an academic perspective to teach with method based on the things that I learned and grew up with, and even based on things that I don't previously like or have, but that I have seen in dancing with other groups previously. I was lucky to grow up with a good teacher in Las Vegas. But I've danced with in other situations where the teaching is just figure it out, just feel it. We all
Doesn't
want
all
to
work
talk.
for everyone.
Mhm.
But at the same time, just feeling it is kind of a cop out in terms of tradition because we want to say that this music you just feel. But if you're not raised in a tradition of certain rhythms and time
Mhm.
signatures,
Mhm.
and you're only accustomed in your life to hearing bum, bum, bum,
Mhm.
bum, how is your body supposed to understand that? And so the method comes with breaking down rhythm and certain fundamental techniques for the kids. So
Mhm.
okay, I'm patient because I understand what process and method are. Those
Mhm.
two things are very important. I'm patient because, well, mistakes that's the road. I'm patient with that because I studied music. Every day was one mistake after another. I'm patient because in martial arts, you train a position until your body moves in that movement more comfortably. I think that's one reason even the kids come with a pretty good attitude.
Mhm.
And in Astoria, at least, kids like to mess around all the time. But I will say the difference
Kids
between
are
how
kids.
kids are kids. I will say the difference between how they can mess around in my classes in Astoria and other places is that in other places they want to mess around to escape you. They want to when you turn your back, they want to do something they want to get away with their friends, even though
Yeah.
there's a mirror in the room.
Don't tell them that.
Yeah. In Astoria, we still have a mirror, but the kids are messing around with me. They're including me when they're doing something they're not supposed to. They're doing it to me sometimes. So it's always understood that we're all in this together. And when I'm like, all right, enough of that. Stop tickling my ankles, whatever you're doing. Let's get back to work.
Kids. They're so cute. I kinda wanna go back to that "just feel it" part too, because I'm sure I probably said that, at some point when I was teaching, right? Because it makes sense to me, but there are some people who just like how some people don't have, like, inner monologue, right? They don't, hear themselves kind of thinking, which blows my mind because I certainly do. To some people, that just feel it means there's no reference to what that means, right? Like, and that could be perhaps if somebody has like a timing problem, right? Like they're always a little bit ahead or behind the beat, or just they're very much analytical, like feel what? What is that it? So it's really interesting to talk to somebody who has such a musical background where you understand, how to break down like the phraseology of something that you have to replicate with your feet, or your movements, your body movements, because I think that's probably a way that they teach other types of dance. And it's not necessarily, in my mind, how people default to teaching Greek dance because we just say things like just feel it. But I think that that means nothing to some people, you know? Like, they're
Yeah, of
trying, you can tell that they're trying to feel it, but, like, what is it, you know?
course. Well, I think it's, let's say the majority of dance teachers, especially in these competition circuits, they are members of their community.
Mhm,
Maybe they were pretty good dancers in their group at one time who decided to step up, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are teachers
mhm,
actually or have method, and they're doing their best, but also maybe they grew up and figured it out and were able to feel it as dancers, but that that phrase is also meaningless without their own actual understanding of what you're
mhm,
supposed to feel. It's not just the kids knowing what they're supposed to feel, it's also
mhm,
our own understanding. Let's take an easy one. Like the Teak family, many of them, those dances are typically in a five count.
mhm,
So what am I supposed to feel? Because it's at five, it's not evenly cut.
mhm,
So if you're supposed to feel holding your body in a movement slightly longer than another, then maybe the kids have to understand that three is more than two.
mhm,
So if the count in the groove is felt in like a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and maybe it starts to get your brain moving that I'm not supposed
mhm,
to just do this with my body. So these things I think are important. And even if you
mhm,
can capture that count without saying 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and like the way I was taught uh, these dances from Kiriako years and years ago, it says it more and less and more and less and
mhm,
more. So that body movement and
mhm,
when you say the more and less is in the groove. So it all
mhm,
fits. And I say and use both, whatever works
mhm,
for them. On this matter, I'm still trying to crack the code of the best way to teach this. I am trying my hardest these days to get more music in dance practice,
hmm,
even if it's just at some point getting somebody to play drum
mm,
without any other instrument. If the drum is in the music, for them to feel and hear that drum in their
mhm,
chest, and that's the only thing that they can focus on. So,
mhm,
I mean, method is something that isn't finished. It's always growing and being
mhm,
developed.
yeah. Do you ever, like, while you're teaching, kind of flash back to, like, a professor that you had in any of your university experiences where you were like, "Man, that person was such a D," and then you're like, "But I'm emulating them right now." Have you ever had that experience?
I'm trying to think back. It doesn't, in this moment, it doesn't trigger any memories, but
Yeah.
there's probably in some case that it'll pop into my head at some.
Yeah, I just feel like I could imagine somebody like, in I'm thinking about, like, band back in the day, bad example because it's trivial compared to what you've done, but, like, where you're like, "Man, that person was really hammering, this home," and then you're like, "And now I'm doing that,"
Light bulb.
however many years later.
I guess I could say that in my early days of my undergrad, that I had a couple really good professors that maybe I didn't appreciate at the time, that they were hounding me about fundamentals. Fundamentals, fundamentals, fundamentals. Me, up until I was about 25, wasn't ready to, I would consider for myself, wasn't ready to be a good student. I just wanted to do everything on instinct, which got me to trouble because a lot of bad instincts. But they would hound me all the time. They give me an assignment. and you want to get away with this, especially, and if you talk with your friends, a lot of them will agree with you. They give you an assignment to, I was studying classical composition, so we'd have writing assignments. So we'd have to write something using certain tools. And I would always insist, well, if I take this tool and ignore it in this moment of this writing, it sounds so much better. And they're like, I don't care. It, and it, at the time, the logic is, if it sounds good, why aren't I just writing what sounds good?
Sure.
Without understanding the trap that I was setting for myself later, because I would write myself into a hole that I couldn't get myself out of until I understood and had control over fundamentals.
Hmm.
And you can't just work on instinct. And that's not what school is for. The school is not for me to prove that I'm a fantastic composer. For me to prove that I have control over the tools that they're trying to give me.
Hmm.
And so that was a big failure on my part in those early days. And I fought a lot with my professors and with myself over this, and put to a point where I decided this is stupid. I have to completely change how I think.
I love that. I'm gonna actually use that line with my students this semester when they're, you know, struggling with fundamentals and assignments. I'm gonna use that. So thank you.
Yes.
That was a good deep dive.
I know. I
Didn't
know.
think we were going to take it that far, but very, very philosophical. I like it.
I know. I
Well,
love
I
it.
think it's reinforced in every aspect of any activity that I've ever pursued.
Exactly.
Studying music. Okay, I was studying composition, so theory was the structure, and composition and orchestration, counterpoint. These were the big focuses that I had to grasp. But even playing an instrument, this is also the thing. When you're practicing at home, you're not performing. And as I would start teaching music later, this was a point I would try to make to the students. I was like, practice isn't for you to play through the entire piece. Maybe if you spend an hour working on just maybe your scales, your arpeggios, these repetitive, tedious tasks, which give you a technical accuracy and dexterity to execute the performance, you'll get further along in 1 week doing that than trying to play from beginning to end, beginning to end. And this is reinforced in jujitsu when I was training. You know, the coach would show us a whole sequence. This goes to this goes to this. And then he'd have us drill some small movement. From this,
Hmm.
you have to switch your body like this. And no, well, you can't get to the next one until the way you move your body to this position, you have to have one elbow come in this way. Everything has to move seamlessly before you get to the next one, or else it's going to be sloppy. It's not going to have the same impact. And it has immediate effects, because if there's someone on top of you and they weigh a lot, if you don't execute it with the correct technique, they're not going anywhere.
Right.
You're just being smothered.
Right.
So, we can't always have the feedback of somebody heavy being on top of you, but I think this is a very visceral way to validate this act of fundamentals.
Yeah.
So even in dance, as I study with more teachers in Greece and they describe things to me, some of them have specific method they work with. Some of them have just been teaching a long time and they say certain things that I think I could work with that. And maybe I could even develop that into something that I use as a repetitive
Hmm.
thing for my kids and for my adults. So I've been trying very hard as it develops to break down certain areas into fundamental movements. At the end of the day, I could say that steps are easy,
Sure.
but how you move within those steps, that's the difficult. That,
Exactly.
so, work drilling these things. And I try to remind the kids, because in the adults as well, because sometimes they're like, what are we doing?
Hmm.
It's killing me right now. But okay, if they stick with it for a month or two, then they see the progress. And generally, everybody who's involved, they understand after that the importance.
Well, yeah. I mean, because if you're thinking about somebody going out and doing like a complex series of figuras or whatever it might be, a little bit of improv, if you don't have that base to fall back on, it's exceedingly difficult to kind of get back into line, to polish it out, to make it look, smooth, natural, so on and so forth. Whereas when you watch somebody who literally has been doing these dance steps, if you will, like the fundamentals almost since birth, it's just seamless. It just like oozes out of them, right? It's not, uh, it's more of like an energetic visual feeling that you get, as you know what I mean? It, you see it different. Like I'm thinking about, um, our friend, Mr. Ioannis in Crete, right? It just drops out of him. Like it's almost like snaps his finger and boom, he does it. There's just not even really thought to it. It's all part of, you know, the whole
Sure.
package. Jujitsu does not really sound like, a fun hobby, but
Not with that attitude. No, no, I said not with that
Yeah.
attitude.
no, that's I mean, like, I'm not
No,
gonna go down that route 'cause it's a family
Okay.
podcast, but
there's joy in everything. But what Dimitri, I mean, when you say it's true, though. I mean, really, in all walks of life, there's so much stuff, and it's wonderful that you can keep an open mind to be like,
yeah.
I can actually use these fundamentals. We'll go with these to better, you know, whatever it is that you're trying to learn, teach, acquire. Yeah,
Thanks for getting us back on track, Nico. I appreciate
always
that.
here to help.
Amazing. So let's pivot a little bit and talk about how you spend your summers and kind of how you've been curating that big part of your life, which is, trips that you go on that I believe are um, really fueling what you bring back. So talk to us
Very
about
immersive
that.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the first year I went just for research purposes and learning purposes. I didn't have a super clear road. I knew that I needed to fill a lot of gaps in my knowledge, and I needed to start bringing back things more than just remembering dances that I did in a competitive group 10 years ago. That was
Hmm.
the basic, first drive for me. I just needed to up the game of what I'm offering, making sure that what I bring to the table here in New York is accurate, high level, and methodical. That was my first thinking process. So that summer, it was my first summer out of these last four with Yanni in Iraklio,
Hmm.
Yannis Plagiotakis, who has a dance school called Horospito that I grew to have a very deep relationship with him and his family, and
Hmm.
it was an unexpected thing. Never knew that was going to start from that. But I had reached out to him the spring before, the summer leading up to my trip, and I'm bringing this one up because he brings this up because this is for him why he wanted to invite me to his school.
Hmm.
He says, I mean, I haven't checked our original message, but he said that when I reached out to him, I didn't ask him to teach me figures or this and that. I reached out and I said, I want to learn about Crete. I want to learn the historical context of the dances, the steps, the music, the regional personalities of the music and the dances, and how to move correctly fundamentally. And he loved that. And so the first summer, we didn't really do anything fancy. It
Hmm.
was just, he's like, Dimitri, this is now a level one.
Basic.
And he was very happy with that. I was happy with it. It was a lot of information. And at the time, I was just kind of collecting videos. I tried not to go in blind and learn steps from scratch. We criticize, and many of us criticize, and we should, that people who just learn from YouTube, sensei YouTube, as he would make fun of people who just find something and say, that's it. If you use it as a certain tool, it can be very helpful. So
Hmm.
I didn't go to Crete not knowing steps.
Hmm.
Correct or not, I had a basic list of 20 something dances that I was able to find, 20 something dances that I watched these videos, I learned the steps, and I showed up. So he says, we're going to learn the dance. I start doing the dance with him. Wrong? Fine. But then that's when the interesting lesson comes because it's wrong, he's explaining to me why it's wrong. He's explaining to me the personality of the steps of an area in Crete. And for me, that I kind of have carried that over to every single teacher that I've worked with since then. I try not to go saying, I'm ready to learn whatever. Maybe it works for somebody else. I don't know. But, I try to be prepared so that we can go deeper than just learning, here are the steps.
Hmm.
During this time, I'm also collecting and coming across more and more historical videos, ones that was finding out more and more that are very valuable among a lot of dance teachers in the competition circuit, ones that they keep them hidden. They don't want to tell anybody how they found them. It's YouTube. It's not that hard.
Everything's on YouTube now.
There's this website. If you don't know about it, ready? I'll spell
Yeah.
it. YOU.
Yeah. And they act very precious about this material. And anyway, you can find most of it unless they have taken certain videos themselves or been gifted something there. Even these historical videos, ones from the 60s and 70s, you can find a lot of this stuff. And there's no way that some 50 something year old teachers are better at YouTube than I am.
Let it out to me. You tell us. Tell us.
So I was collecting without a very specific plan. And when I was there, I also would go peruse bookshops and start my collection. And then it would start to take shape more the second year. Second year, I went again and I thought, I want to start collecting. I'm already a record collector. I want to start collecting old records, see if I can find things that are not digitized. I want to old recordings of these dances, of this music to show the personality. I was collecting more books and it started to shape more as my vision for Meraki expanded with, I already had it in my head. Embroidery would be great. I already had it in
Hmm.
my head. I wanted music classes. So then I thought, okay, what is Meraki for all of this? What is my role? I'm the guy with the resources. So okay, I'm not just buying books with recordings. I'm not just buying and like information about musicians. Not just buying books on dance. I'm buying books on Laografia during the calendar year of the island. I'm buying books, transcriptions of the musical notes of all the music. I'm buying books on embroidery that has patterns for you to follow. I'm buying costume books. And this expanded with how the different areas I would explore as well. So, okay, we're using Crete as an example, but I would go on to study with a number of people. Now it's kind of becoming a blur which year was what. But okay, I've been in Crete every summer the last 4 years to work with Yanni, and as well now I've had some meetings with other teachers, Nikos Foufakis and Dimitri Delis, who are all
Hmm.
great resources. And I've traveled around different parts of at least Eastern Crete to find a lot of information and collect resources. But then I think 2 years ago, I started working with Christiana from Icaria.
Hmm.
She lives in Athens, so I had reached out to her and we had done a couple lessons in Athens, kind of like that level one I did with Yanni the first year. Then last year, that must have been 3 years ago. So last year, I actually went to Icaria with her. And this summer, I was in Icaria again with her. And this summer, it expanded as well because we were doing interviews and collecting resources and trying to find archival videos of Icaria, because this is something you don't find on YouTube, actually.
Hmm.
And we have found some things. The more we ask and the more we talk to people. And this is an ongoing project. And okay, I started expanding my palette on bondos because this is a big base for myself. Like in Las Vegas, we did a lot of bondos.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And certainly one of the most formative teachers was Kyriakos Moisidis, that my teacher Bessie brought a few times to Las Vegas to teach us. And then I would have invited Kyriakos here to New York. And then I expanded my palette as well. I studied with another teacher, Kostas Alexandridis in Athens, because I have an interest in learning about Momoyeri. And all these teachers, they will recommend these other
Hmm.
teachers with prime research. That's the key thing, the people that they respect. And, I'm starting to understand this better and better and more. But, he, in his own words, would say, yes, Momoyeri is my big forte. But when I went to study with him, is there anything else you are interested in? I said, well, I have some interest in Gimush Maten as one of the Western Pontian villages. And he says, I'm not so good with this. You should talk to Kyriako. Okay, so it went back to Kyriako. And I thought, okay, well, what else would you be able to offer? And he says,
Mhm.
Matsuka. So for him, you will understand that even these great teachers, they have, not that it's their limits. For their groups, they would teach these other areas, but they understand what teachers from other areas are coming to look for. And that carried over to this year. I went to Veria to study with Vasilis Asvestas, who is another
Mhm.
wonderful man whose huge, big focus is Akdagmaten. And so I spent a number of days with him studying his things. And I have made it a point now to ask different teachers who they say are the teachers I should speak to for different areas. Okay, so this is how these last 4 years have gone. Traveling to Greece, going to different areas, collecting resources to be the resource for Meraki.
Mhm.
Last year, we were digitizing all of the books. At this point, there's about 200 books in our collection. So digitizing the books, trying to
Crazy.
start translating the books
Mhm.
for some people in the group who don't speak very, very good Greek. I'm not going to say who.
You're
I'm not saying that they're on this call right now.
not going to point any fingers
I'm not
at
going to
any.
point any fingers. I'm just going to say that their name starts with D and rhymes with Dimitri. So anyway, we're digitizing, we're translating, we're collecting records. We're basically the resource for any new program I want to introduce.
I love that.
Amazing. All I'm just picturing in my head is like a beautiful mind, like spider web. Like, okay, with this teacher and this teacher doing this thing, and oh, we got connections here.
Yeah,
I don't know
no
about a
doubt.
beautiful mind, but I know somebody who's up very late trying to organize everything, sweaty, and it is in his underwear all night. So I don't know about a beautiful mind, but
Potato.
so,
To each his own, right? Subject beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I mean, I think it's good though too. Like regardless too, if people speak Greek, read it fluently, whatever it might be, when you're getting that in depth into a text, sometimes you need a little bit of support, right? Because stuff doesn't necessarily make sense. And certainly it's not always going to translate either in a way that's going to completely make sense. But I think that's important. I think when we talk about like accessibility of resources and stuff like that, and the reality is that people might have a fine, proficient knowledge of Greek, be able to get around the summers, have conversations, but reading a book is just really, really different too,
Yeah,
And now I'm learning with this whole chat GPT thing that that thing can really do a lot. It can like pull together themes in different books and,
yeah,
yeah,
do
and
all
actually
these
that
things.
that's been one of the tools that we've been working to see which resource translates the most accurately, because even some of the new AI
Mhm,
translation features are able to understand context.
mhm,
At the very least, these books are referential books, so the information being told is kind of just mostly straightforward.
mhm.
It's not like we're translating Lord of the Rings and we're missing the themes of the of the
yeah. There's
characters and
all these
whatnot.
underlined
Yeah.
themes
What's the
and tones.
subtext? I don't know. I need to know what happens in this dance.
Right, right. I found Claude AI is we're not sponsored, although if you're listening, Claude, um,
They are.
yeah, exactly. Literally, they are, especially on this platform. Has been really great with understanding like social nuances and idiomatic expressions because that's something I don't often pick up on well
Hmm.
in Greek, which just makes for a really cool conversation at times. But Claude can be helpful. So might want to try him out if you haven't
Of
already.
course.
Dimitri, do you have any right hand person or assistant or something, or are you doing all this yourself?
I have some people that I lean on for certain things, and I'm lucky to have certain people around that are willing to let me torture them with this stuff. One being my our language teacher, Mary, who I'm always like, Mary, what is this? Or if I need to reach out to a teacher, I may write what I want to write to them, and I'm like, Mary, put this in Greek for me. Or if I have a Zoom call, which I've done with this year's teacher, Vasilis Asvestas, and my first time speaking with our violinist that we've been working with the
Mhm.
last couple of years, Yanis Fakianos. With them, the language barrier is a little greater than I'm used to. usually, like Yanni, our dance teacher, Yanni,
Mhm.
okay, we understand each other with the broken
Mhm.
communication back and forth. But with some of them, it's much more difficult. With violin, Yanni, sometimes we have misunderstandings based on we didn't understand the fundamental of what we were saying
Mm.
to each other. So we can get around a conversation, but it's just made easier with someone like Mary. Vasilis Asvestas doesn't speak English.
Mhm.
So poor Anna, who came with me this summer to Veria, she wasn't really there to coming along. She was hoping to go sightseeing, but I was like, oh shit, I need your help. I need you to sit in on hours of instruction these next few days and translate all of it. And
Please.
okay, this is why I'm starting to feel a little bad. And also for my own understanding, I have to deepen my own understanding of everything by learning more Greek. It's been getting better. I don't care what anybody says, Mary, but my Greek is getting better. Last year, I actually had an assistant at one of my younger dancers, Maria. She'd actually accompany me to Brooklyn to help with one of the younger age groups, and she was helping with digitization. She translated a couple things for me, and she was really great. I mean, I was so happy to have her, and I'm so proud and I'm not at all upset or feel abandoned that she went off to college. But
Things must come to an end, at least for foreigners.
I wish her all the best, and I hope she comes back. But I mean, she had a really good head on her shoulders, and she helped a ton, a ton. So I do have some people that are, are doing certain things, and certainly I'm trying to grow to the point where it can be even financially feasible for other people to get more involved. For Mary, it is because she teaches a class, but it's difficult to be like, yeah, this is my business, but I need your help to help me run my business.
Mhm.
So all right, step by step.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure how you were going to answer that. So I was like, I hope I'm not backing myself in the corner here. But I think it's really important for people to understand, like, you need help. Like, you can't
Absolutely.
do everything yourself. And a
Even
lot of
if,
people will get burned out trying to do
sure,
everything themselves.
listen, even if I was fluent in Greek, all of this help would have still been
Mhm.
required. I mean, as we have grown, it's the second, first and second year, I'm trying to run Meraki, I'm trying to grow it, and I still have to keep a different job because that's how
Mhm.
I have to pay my rent. Last year, it became my full time job, and which I was lucky to have. But then
Mhm.
it's not just my full time job; it's extra hours trying to be on top
Mhm.
of everything. There's a lot of the clerical stuff that where I'm not in a moment big enough to be able to, you know, actually hire someone.
Mhm.
And it's been brought up not just by me, but my dancers. They're like, you can't do all of these things on your own.
Mhm.
And that's been the difficulty, is shouldering a lot of the responsibility, both responsibility wise, but also the financial burden of
Mhm.
putting together seminars, which always lose me money, or
Mhm.
and putting together the end of the year parastases. And it's different when you're in a community that the financial backing is from a church.
Mhm.
So if you put together a parastasi at the end of the year, which would probably cost maybe $15,000 to $18,000, I know because this was the cost of the ones I had put
Mhm.
together. Okay, if you don't have to shoulder the financial burden, it's one thing. You just have to work hard to make sure it happens for everyone. But I want to make sure these things happen. So
Mhm.
it's a different kind of stress. And I am thankful for the amount of people that are in my group that understand that it's, yes, I'm running a business, but it's not like I'm making out on top
Mhm.
so much financially that they pay for a yearly membership, but all the money that I make, I pay my rent and I reinvest into this, and
Mhm.
I put together events that are nice for all of us, nice for the community. You can't do any of this by yourself. There's no
Mhm.
way I could sit here and say I have done this alone and I am very special.
Right.
I mean, you
It's
are
my
special.
decree.
Well, that's a
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. I think though that's a very interesting point and perspective, and there are certainly benefits and also drawbacks to being tied specifically to a community, right? There's a lot less individuality and flexibility that comes with that. But, when you really think about what goes into like finding space, paying for space rental, I mean that's a huge part of all of this. And it's a little bit wild to me when even when people are like part of a community, so they're teaching for a church or the group is based in the church and the church is like, we're going to charge you to use our hall. Like, I'm going to tell you to get out of town. And, I realized we were so fortunate growing up that like our group didn't have to do that. We had to pay for like cleanup services and stuff like that. But we were able to put on so many different events because we didn't have to have, like $8,000, $5,000 hall rental.
Yeah.
It's just astronomical to me. So, um, you know, there's just so much that goes into these groups and sustaining them, especially in a place like Astoria. N I mean, I can't even just imagine the overhead, so kudos to you for doing that and for connecting with people in your group who are able to help you in whatever way they see fit, and I totally get your sentiment of, like, this is my business and I'm asking them for help. It's, like, a little bit weird, but I do believe that kind of stuff pays off in the future. You know what I mean? I think there's actually a huge benefit to it in the future.
Well, I think the people that get more deeply involved, they
Mhm.
have a better understanding of what I'm trying to do.
Mhm.
Sure, there are other options for some community groups that just get together. It's basically a coffee hour with some
Mhm.
dancing.
Sure.
But they, what I have in my head for what I want Meraki to be, will connect with certain people and has connected with certain people that want to be part of helping bring it to a certain point. And it's especially in the context of where, in what era, let's say, I moved to Astoria.
Mm.
I moved to Astoria in like the memory of Greeks being super, super dominant in Astoria.
Yeah.
And I understood this immediately because everybody I would talk to, that cafe over there, which is now not a cafe, used to be a Greek cafe. It was just filled day in and day out, only Greek people. Or they would say like Neptune's Diner, which closed, was filled all day long with only Greek people. The clubs, the Greek clubs that used to exist, all the silogi that would have their own dance groups because there were so many people around that every part of Greece could be represented in their own full dance group at
Mhm.
whatever level, it doesn't matter, but they all had something. And I came to Astoria in this moment where every single person I talked to that was involved with a silogo or some community group, they're like, there's no neolea. They don't want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And some of the silogos have closed their doors.
Mhm.
Some of them are just smaller. Some of them have zero youth. Some of them have three or four, maybe five kids coming around for dance. And it's like from ages 5 to 17. And this is the situation that they have found themselves in. And so how do you fix this? Is
Mhm.
it just a result of Greeks leaving? Uh, do the young people really not want to engage with their culture? I mean, it seems to often be the sentiment that they express that the young people,
Mhm.
they don't care. I didn't think it was true when they told me this, and
Mhm.
I especially don't think it's true now.
I agree.
I think they got away with running their silogos a certain way at a time where it didn't matter if they knew how to run or offer anything.
Mhm.
If the audience was always there, they never had to consider how to treat people, how to keep the audience, how to offer things of quality. They could just have it and
Mhm.
people would be involved.
It
But
was
now
very
because there
default.
because there are less people, you know, they can't figure out why. And
Mhm.
I got an understanding of this pretty quickly. I got involved with a couple different silogos that wanted certain things. They want neolea, but almost immediately I'm shut down from doing things what I would consider the right way.
Sure.
And they want things done their way. And their way is to have an empty building. I don't know what to tell you. So when I started renting space on my own, kind of I figured out a way to validate my way.
Mhm.
I was able to build from scratch, and now we have all of these people,
Mhm.
and they're invested, they're involved, youth to adults. And this is the kind of that connection, bringing it back to the connection certain people have, where they care whether or not some sort of cultural presence is preserved here.
Mhm.
And it seems to be many of the organizations don't care about what they're offering. They just think it's important to exist. But it's not enough. You can't just have a building and say you want something. What are we offering? Are we
Right.
offering culture? Do you want, does it matter that if your kid walks through the door and the teacher is teaching nonsense, does that matter? I don't
Mhm.
know. Do you just want your kid to interact with the traditions, even if fundamentally it's not anything related to it? It doesn't matter if uh, they don't want to interact with the program because it's not fun, or it's not, I don't know, it's just not what they're looking for.
Mhm.
So, I approached it, as I still approach it, with a very hard head and a very strong idea of how I want it done. And I think you have to. I think this
Mhm.
is how you attract committed people, getting
Yeah.
lost in the sauce here. Yeah.
No, but I mean, I think a few things here. I think one, I would, and I'm not setting out to solve anybody's problems, but just to bloviate on this myself, like certainly there's probably an opportunity to look at the leadership of some of the Silogi, right? Like, are they in touch with reality? Do they have younger people stepping in to be leaders in the organization? Maybe, maybe not, right? I don't know. I can't necessarily judge. And there's a place for people who want sort of like, let me call it like recreational instruction. Like, I just want the basics or the whatever you want to call it, so that if I go to a wedding, I feel comfortable. Or if I go to a Greek night, should that exist, I feel comfortable. There's certainly people who are just looking for that. When you're going in to establish something that you want to have longevity to, you have to have depth when you start, right? Because that kind of like, I just want to make sure I'm prepared because my seventh cousin Tula is finally getting married. She's 52, and we're all going to be dancing at the wedding together, right? That is going to fade out quickly. You know what I mean? Like, that is not a sustainable model, right? Because it doesn't bring people back. It's transactional. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, in theory. I mean, if somebody's teaching like, you know, Hasa Posevrico as a Kalamatiano, I have a problem with that. But, you know, like,
They'd be surprised.
in theory, though, you know what I mean? Like, that is a transactional experience. I want A, I'm going to get A. But if you go into starting a program and you don't have depth, you don't have kind of vision, to Nico's point, no matter how spider webby it is, in your brain, right? Like, you can't grow. You're going to be your own worst enemy of that. You're going to be your own limiting factor. And I think in areas where there was density in Greek populations, that is the Achilles heel at times, right? Because, and we've talked about this a whole bunch, like, it's so accessible. It was so accessible to people that nobody kind of stepped up and pushed the depth there to go from just our Silogi is offering, lessons in this because we are this from this island or whatever it might be. There's
Yeah.
just, and that floor can fall out on you pretty quickly. So, I think that's really interesting too, to think about like the weight on people's shoulders. And we even can think about this in the podcast, right? We're slowly kind of changing the podcast a little bit to dive a little bit deeper. Like, we certainly haven't gotten to know, that was our tagline for the past however many seasons. Everybody there is to know in Greek dance in the States. It's no, but we've gotten to know a ton of people. But now we're digging a little bit deeper into kind of like these pragmatic thought processes of people who are leading these programs or who are doing research. Like, how do you get into somebody's brain to understand, like, okay, this is their approach to research, or this is how they've structured their program? Because eventually somebody might want to emulate what you're doing in a different area, right? Now, will they have that depth? I don't know. That depends on the person, and their, drive for that. But it's just so interesting to really think about that because you can see how, the floor is going to fall out if we're just teaching this. Well, okay, that's going to get boring. What brings people back, So, Dimitri, you've been on the podcast once before.
Sure.
I'm sure you gave advice because we usually ask that question, but that was quite some time ago. And I don't exactly remember. But now that you've had a whole bunch of experiences,
Sure.
awesome highs, I'm sure, certainly things that you're like, dang, that could have gone better.
That's putting it lightly.
Right, exactly. Listen, we've all been there,
Family
trust me.
friendly. Family friendly.
Yes, and we've all been there because I switched the hosting platform of this podcast and
Now we're
realized I
doing
did
great.
it yeah, exactly. And I did it the wrong way. So thankfully I didn't lose any episodes, but boy, oh boy, did I realize that mistake. What would you tell someone who, like, let's say a bunch of years from now, somebody's like, hey, I want to start a program in Wichita, Kansas. I don't know, just in a random city, not necessarily somebody who's like, I want to start something in New York. No, just somebody who comes to you for advice. What, after the past, 3-4 years of really, really creating what your program is now, what would you tell people?
It's difficult to say because, most of the programs are involved with a community, like an existing community. But I mean, let's say somehow Wichita has enough Greeks where you can
I
start
don't know
a
why I picked Wichita. I just
wherever,
came
but
to
if
it.
is say that they had enough Greeks where you could start a business like this, because my experience is very unique to the fact that we have so many Greeks in New York, and there are already other groups. There are other groups that did not like the fact that I set up shop here. There are other personalities that want to keep things the way they were. But if you're going to offer something, then you have to decide in a moment that you're going to build yourself up to be the best version of what's being offered possible.
Mhm,
I decided that if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go 100%. I put aside financial comfort. I put aside projects that I was working on. I haven't worked on music.
mhm,
When I realized that something could be really grow out of this, I decided I had to say, well, that means day in and day out, I'm studying.
mhm.
That means I'm working on building and fostering my relationships every day. And okay, in my own personality, and I've had this conversation with maybe some people are better diplomats than I am, but I will say, if you're going to do something that's going to, just by its own existence, create conflict, you have to stick to your convictions. This has been, again, maybe some people won't understand this because they're only in their communities that they
Mhm,
built, that they build in. But in growing a business like this here, you're going to experience pushback. You're going to experience all sorts of things. You can either try to pretend that, it's okay, everybody has their own way, or you can stand up for yourself. So if you're going to stand up for yourself, know what you're talking about, do your best, study as much as you can, and go with the right mindset. If the question is, what advice do I have for not creating a program, but research, then it's a different thing.
tell us about
Because
that.
it seems like, because this would be more relatable, that what does research mean? It seems like that word is thrown around willy-nilly.
Mhm,
Very
You know,
loosely.
I did my research. You found an article. Good. Well, that's a thing. And
mhm,
maybe in the grand scheme of things, it can be part of the research, but research is a big thing. Research is the combination. Teachers who are qualified to guide you in certain directions, to help you understand other materials that you may have found. Imagine this collection of archival videos from 1930 to the 70s. Okay, I don't know what I'm looking at.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's important to have context for these videos too. It's not just the videos by themselves. And sometimes there's a context that maybe even delegitimizes a video.
Sure.
Just because it's old doesn't mean it's good.
Sure.
But then it's also beyond them. There's research beyond dance. There's research into culture. There are other teachers and authors who have written books that have their own knowledge of the island. That even maybe your dance teacher, maybe they focus so much on this, they didn't even read some of this other stuff.
Mhm.
It's not often really the case because usually any good teacher has this holistic outlook, but research is being able to read, being able to find references. Research is your collection of music. I don't think in discussing dance, there's enough discussion over music. We talk about speaking to musicians a lot, but you don't get the dance without the music. If you're not listening to early recordings, if you're not watching these early videos, you don't know the personality of the dance because the personality of the dance is chosen by the music. These things are these things all come together. It's not just the immediate research, and I think this is another part where you'd have to decide to really go further. Teachers like Christos Papakostas, who are not just dance teachers specializing in, let's say, Ipiros, because he's from there,
Mhm.
but he's one of the top ethnographers around. And his writing is not just about the dancing; it's about the philosophy and historical context about dance not being a static art form, which he's said to me before. He said in other presentations I've seen him give, and it's having a fundamental understanding of what makes traditional arts traditional arts. Some
Mhm.
philosophy has to be included in research. And if you really want to go through it, you can't just touch Greece. And I'm not saying that you have to learn the dances of every country, but there's a lot of folkloric research of other countries
Mhm.
and they have insights, maybe not specifically linked to Greece, but they have insights about thinking and approaching understanding of traditional arts that you could take and use. And it's all about, and if you want to get to a fundamental understanding of what we're doing here, then we're kind of looking for an understanding of social utility, the hows, the whys, what is the value set attached to being immersed in these traditions. So for me, if I would say, if you're going to do it, do that.
Mhm.
Otherwise, are we trying to create another HDF, FDF group?
Mhm.
Is this the most important milestone to get to have a competition group? Sure, we want to compete. Competition is fun, but is this, if you're only in this circuit of September to January or September to February, you're only going to collect certain things.
Mhm.
So taking this, I think, as much developing a more holistic outlook of what traditional research is.
Mhm. Well, yeah, and I think some people miss the boat. Like, what is the question, right? So professionally, when we talk about research in the world that I work in, it's what is our practice problem that we're trying to solve, right? And you can take that idea of what is the why or what is the practice problem and apply that to Greek dance. Like why in these blah 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 was this done in this way? You know what I mean? So you sort of have to start with the why. And I think we don't often talk enough about that, right? So that why is buried, which creates sort of this spinning and like hunting and pecking, which, yes, of course, you're going to do in research, but then you don't necessarily know like the path that you're going down. Like, what question are you truly trying to answer? Because research, if you think about a traditional research study, it is very narrow in its focus. It cannot be broad. It's never that will never get approved. If you're in an academic setting, because you can't answer multiple whys. Your research should unlock doors to ask more questions, right? And should throw stuff open where you're like, oh shoot, I thought it was going to be this, and they do it because of this community was going through this, and then you disprove your own research. That's actually kind of what you want in a way, right? So that's a super super interesting thought, and a shameless plug, I do hope you submit an abstract to the ethos conference.
I know you've been on me for this, and I will do it. I'm sorry.
I
Don't
have,
hit me.
I won't. I do not resort to violence, at all. I don't.
Well,
No. Yeah, Nico's like, "That's why I'm in Greece, actually."
Well, I think even going back a little bit to the hows and the whys, if I think this is for me, the next project for more new teachers is to include the social values attached to the traditions. I think it's an example of this is you had an earlier podcast about dance floor etiquette. Well, this is a very immediate example of a behavior not being taught and attached to the dance. We spend so much time teaching
Mhm.
how to perform that we forgot to explain how to be.
Hmm.
And I think it's not just, and I don't want to feel like I keep on going back at the competition. It's not just a problem with the competition. You see it now because the last 10, 15 years, panegyria have become very fashionable in Greece for young people.
Sure.
And, in my experiences in many of them, and I think especially Ikaria, the summer panegyria, are just thousands of people at these festivals, that you see very poor behavior, people who are good, they're young, they want to be part of this,
Mhm.
but then they also don't come with a respectful mind all the time. I've seen it in many cases where, okay, in their format, in the panigiri, they have songs,
Mhm.
Icariotico comes on, and now maybe some of these older guys were at the front, and all of a sudden, a group of four young people, without being invited, decide that they're at the front, and they were just waiting for their chance to be there. They're waiting for this song to change. They are there, and you see the pushing. Everybody wants to get to a good spot in the line.
Mhm.
Again, this is an example we saw at competition as well. And I remember in certain Panagiria that we went, I would look around. I would try to take a step back because I was not interested in fighting for a spot. Too old for this. But I take a chance to look up and look around, and I see some people that are clearly the older generation. People look like they're from the island. They get so discouraged that they leave and they go sit down. And this is a big shame. So it decentralized the I, the individual
Mhm.
from the traditions is I think an important project that we should all be attacking.
yeah.
Do you think that I wanna preface this by I agree with you, because I think ego can be not good in a lot of these instances, and that's how I take the idea of depersonalizing the I. But do you think that's detrimental into how traditions will grow, like, 100 years from now?
Well, I actually I don't think so because I think another good example is, or no, we'll just stay with this one. I think the issue isn't about like alienating anybody. I think the decentralizing the individual for the community is important because that is the fundamental value attached to many of these things. The individual gets their chance when they are to be supported at the front, when they're invited or they buy the song, this and that. But without the values, then we've lost the tradition. And it's not really a continuing of the tradition. It's the death of it.
Mhm.
I think that the problem that we see in the States is like, okay, we'll talk about the competition again, but you're more interested in the performance. So
Mhm.
are you practicing tradition or are you practicing performance? This goes back to for me, it goes back to the discussion, the point made by Jesus Papakostas about the difference between observed arts and practiced arts.
Mhm.
The observed art is something that you observe and you let into your life with the values attached to it. All the things that maybe you grew up with if you're from a
Mhm.
place. The practiced is just something that you drill. So you practice, you practice, you practice. That's ballet. Are we doing performative arts or are we doing cultural arts? Are we doing something that's supposed to bring us together? Is it really alienating to try to tell somebody, try not to act this way when you're on an island that you're not from, in a community, in a village that has welcomed you. Their silogo that's unpaid. They prepared all the food, and they would also like to enjoy the party as well. I don't think that it has this long-term effect. A couple people might say, well, I do want everything to be about me. Well, you lose those people regardless, because
Sure.
they'll find those kind of people will find some way to reject it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't disagree. I don't. I just, it's just an interesting sort of thought. Like, I guess maybe a better way to phrase my question would have been like 100 years from now, are people still like, is there longevity in this? Are we doing enough to preserve these traditions? Right.
But I don't
But
know
that
if
could be a whole nother podcast.
I don't know if I went on a whole tangent and misunderstood your initial
No, no,
question.
no. You didn't. You didn't. But like, I think I've sort of pushed you down that tangent. I think it was great. But just like literally, if we could have like a Marty McFly moment, are people still going to be doing this 100 years from now? I don't know. I can't see the future. I hope so.
I think, as far as I can tell, we do our best to preserve something for the immediate next generation, and then that it becomes the responsibility of a different group of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want
I was only going to say that I see this with, like, we talk about like prime researchers, like these teachers who were the people from an area who videoed interviews with certain people, like especially like a lot of the famous teachers right now that they did a lot of their work in the 80s and the 90s.
Hmm.
You know, in that time, they did a specific work on preservation. And now, even that work, if they don't digitize their tapes, that work has to be preserved in another level. This is like a
Hmm.
technological look at that level of preservation. And that's the same as like when on tape video, that not a camcorder, but like
Hmm.
an 8 millimeter camera that they went around filming these things. Those things are also, they did that work in that moment to preserve, and then it needs to be preserved again. So that's like the technological look of, like, every era has its technological responsibility for preservation, because even some of the digitized stuff gets corrupted. But I think it's, we're doing a certain work now to give a certain understanding, and we give that to our students now.
Hmm.
However many years I get to give this to my students, however many years I get the opportunity to have Meraki, that's my time. I can't really think toward 100 years from now. I hope
How
that,
dare you?
yeah, well, I'm short-sighted like that. But hopefully, at some point, some young person, like I said, my assistant Maria, who is very interested in this stuff, somebody like that says, I want to be that next continuation. Dimitri did his best, but here's how it could be better.
Or Apostoli.
Apostoli.
Oh, Meraki. Yeah.
He's so cute.
We'll check back in on that one in another 15 years.
Yeah, at least. Oh my gosh. Dimitri, this was awesome. I feel like it was also a little bit
So great.
existential.
I think a lot of rich wisdom and helpful nuggets. Definitely, definitely one of the more
Yes. Nuggety.
beneficial, yeah, negative episodes. Thank.
Yeah, man, I feel like we didn't really get into specific areas of interest at all, but I mean, it was more of like a general look of, I don't know, what I'm trying to do in my outlook on everything, I suppose.
Yeah.
I think the important thing is that people at some point in time will be able to relate to this, or at least it will be maybe even just a far off, a light in the distance that, like, oh, at least I see some kind of hope, you know, because it can be really daunting to take on all this stuff, and with certain things happening in the world, and whether it's society or like where we were talking about the preservation of this whole thing, where, is it going to be around in 100 years? Are we doing everything we can? It can be very, very daunting. I think we've, we've done well where we went.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to sit here with you guys and catch up a little bit.
Love
I'm
it.
sure, I'm sure for sure I'm going to see both of you in January.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. That's the plan. God
I
willing.
know. God willing. Yes.